Welcome to the Hockey Writers Maple Leafs Lounge, a weekly show from our Toronto Maple Leafs writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, prospects, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, our team covers everything that happens with the blue and white. Come on in and pull up a chair. Welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge.
Hello and welcome back to the Maple Leafs Lounge. I am your host, Peter Baracchini, and once again, I'm always joined by my colleague over at the Hockey Writers, Alex Hobson. Alex, another kind of slow news week, but still nothing short on Leafs content. How are you doing, buddy?
I am not doing too bad. We're slowly getting closer and closer to the draft and free agency, as you know, the other 30 teams are looking forward to right now. Or the other 29, I guess, if you're not including the Leafs. So, yeah, it's basically where I'm at right now.
And the off-season talk is going to continue. But before we get into that, this week's show is always brought to you by morningskate.io, the daily newsletter delivered to your inbox Monday to Friday, jam-packed with the best hockey stuff on the planet. It's your dose of NHL news, rumors, histories, funnies, quizzes. You name it, you'll get that daily from the terrific staff over at the Hockey Writers. Be sure to put your email in the link in the description below. You will see that, and you will get the newsletter delivered to your inbox every single day. Kicking off the show is some big news, yet not so much at the same time, because it was recently reported earlier this week from Nick Alberga that John Gibson, Anaheim's star goaltender, is open to being dealt, and belief out of the Anaheim is that he's informed the club of that. Obviously, this is big news, and obviously the Toronto Maple Leafs are in the center of it because why not? It's the Toronto Maple Leafs. Given how that news broke, but then, you know, later on, Chris Johnson from TSN went on saying that the Leafs really don't have any interest in Gibson. So, Alex, what do you make of the rumors, and should they be in on him?
Well, first of all, I'm not really surprised that the Leafs aren't interested in Gibson right now because they're in the middle of negotiating with Jack Campbell. I don't know. I think it would, you know, regardless of what you think the Leafs should do with Campbell or how you think they're approaching those negotiations, I think it would be a bit of a slap in the face to Campbell to be, you know, checking in on John Gibson and seeing what he's going for if, like, while you're in the middle of negotiating a contract with this guy. But I don't know. I've had this conversation with a number of people. I think that trading for Gibson would be super risky because his stats and his year-by-year performance has kind of plateaued lately. Plateaued, I guess, like flatlined, whatever you want to say. It's sort of it's hit a low spot, and it's sort of been consistent at that low spot for 4 years running now. So, on the other hand, you know what you're getting in John Gibson. You know that he's, you know, he can be one of the most elite goalies in the league. And he's just one of those guys who, you know, he's established that he can show up in big games. And it's not a coincidence that right around the time the Ducks started, you know, nosediving a little bit and started becoming a lottery team versus a regular playoff contender, his stats went down. So on one hand, he is elite in that sense, but at the same time, there is the risk because you don't know if he's going to be the Gibson that he's been for the past 4 years, or if he's going to rediscover his game from when the Ducks were making the playoffs. So I would prefer that the Leafs do that versus commit to a tandem of, say, I don't know, Peter Mrazek and Casey DeSmith or Anthony Stolarz or something like that, because I as much as there are risks in trading for Gibson, I think there's also risks in committing your entire goaltending situation to a couple of guys who are, you know, either looking to rebound or looking to break out from a backup role. I don't think the Leafs should be doing that. So I think there's risks regardless, but priority number one right now should just be re-signing Jack Campbell.
Over the last 3 seasons, Gibson has a goals against average of 2.90 or higher, but he's had losing records in those 3 seasons, and his save percentage is just above 900. So that is, you know, some grounds to believe that the team in front of him really wasn't that great. And also, again, they're rebuilding right now. And when Gibson or when he's backstopping a really solid team, he's putting up Vezina-like numbers, and that shouldn't be out of the question. And obviously, I agree with you. I think it should be the decision to bring in Gibson should be based on the situation, on how the Jack Campbell conversation unfolds. If things go south and they need a goaltender, then they shouldn't hesitate to make a move, because you need stellar goaltending. You're not going to find that on the free agent market unless you're going after, let's say, Darcy Kemper, but chances are he would most likely want to re-sign in Colorado with how things are going. Marc-Andre Fleury, Braden Holtby, even though he's been injured. And we talked about these names quite a bit before. Free agent market is slim, so you're going to have to make a trade. And even then, the market out there is very, very slim. So the Maple Leafs need to do their due diligence. And I do agree that, I'd rather have John Gibson, and the risk with him involving even his contract is a little bit much, than a tandem of, let's say, Mrazek or DeSmith or Stolarz and another name that just doesn't quite fit the bill, where you could try and make them into a starter, because they're not. They've been, backups their whole entire career. That's probably the way that it's going to be. If you're bringing them in with Campbell or with Gibson to be a backup, then fine, great. But I just can't see any of them being a starter at this point. And yeah, the whole Gibson scenario or rumors is going to be based on what happens with Campbell.
Yeah.
And speaking of Jack Campbell, I mean, it kind of coincides with what we were talking about with Gibson, and how, if everything plays out properly, they will need to go after John Gibson. And there is talks that, there is conversations between the Maple Leafs and Campbell, despite the fact that maybe Leafs fans are a little bit nervous, considering how we didn't hear anything up until this point. Alex, considering that they are talking and the conversations are going, despite no numbers or terms given, is this a good sign for the Maple Leafs and Campbell and even the fans?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much it means, because as far as I'm concerned, like you said, the numbers haven't been exchanged yet. So as far, like, who knows how far apart they are in the negotiations. But when you look back to the last offseason, I don't remember ever seeing tweets about the Leafs and Freddie talking. I think that, with Freddie, it was more of a foregone conclusion that he was going to look for a fresh start somewhere else. So I think the fact that the Leafs are talking about Campbell with his agent, at the very least, that's a good start. Having said that, I would like to hopefully see some progress in the coming weeks. If there is a serious shot the Leafs are going to re-sign him, I would like to see that progress and maybe make some strides in the coming couple of weeks, because otherwise I think you're just kind of talking in circles around Jack Campbell. And, you don't, as much as it's important that they come to a number that they can both agree on, you want that number to be at a fair price. There is still a little bit of unpredictability when it comes to re-signing Jack Campbell. Granted, like I said, just going back to the Gibson thing, I think that taking Campbell's risk is more ideal for this team than taking a risk outside of the crease that, you really got to rely on them to either go from being a backup to being a full-time starting goaltender, an elite goaltender in the playoffs, or look for a rebound. I think with Campbell, you've already seen what he's capable of, and you've seen that he's able to hang with the best of them. So, hopefully the negotiations keep coming in and keep moving along smoothly. Otherwise, not too much else to say on that.
Yeah, you just mentioned that Campbell was able to keep up with the best of them, and you saw that especially during the second half after he came back from his injury, how he was starting to get his form back despite, the hot start, the lull in January and February. And then in March, when he was healthy, he was able to come back and he was able to keep up with the best of them. And especially, the top goalie in the league, Andrei Vasilevskiy, in the playoffs, they went toe to toe. It was very close and it was a great goaltending battle. And you can make the argument that, Campbell did kind of shine at times better than Vasilevskiy. But then again, Andrei Vasilevskiy's Andrei Vasilevskiy. He showed up. He made a timely save, just a little bit more than Campbell, despite Game 7, none of the goals being his fault. You know what you're getting with Campbell, and that's the most important thing. And I think the fact that he wants to stay, the team wants him to stay, the fans want him to stay. He's a character that you love. He's a character guy, even though he's in the nets. He always brings a positive mindset and attitude, and it shows in every single win, in the locker room, on and off the ice. To lose Campbell to free agency or for him to go somewhere else, it's going to be a big blow to the Maple Leafs. And if they're able to maintain this conversation and this dialogue, I think that's a really good sign, despite no numbers being given. To me, if they're talking, that's a good sign. If they aren't, kind of like the Frederik Andersen situation, that really didn't amount to much. And we knew he was gone. Like you said, even during the season, I think we knew he was going to be gone when the season was over. But with Campbell, there is still hope for the time being until, we get the breaking news that the Maple Leafs and Campbell have agreed to a contract. Recapping the show, once again, this episode is brought to you by the morningskate.io, the daily newsletter delivered to your inbox Monday to Friday, jammed packed with the best hockey stuff on the planet. It's your daily dose of news, rumors, funnies, histories, quizzes, everything else from around the NHL, brought to you by the great writing staff over at the Hockey Writers. Once again, you will see a link in the show description. Type in your email and you'll get it straight to your inbox. Now, this is a little bit of an interesting, bit of information. And I only saw this yesterday, considering the fact that it was just minutes before the game 2 against the Lightning and the Colorado Avalanche. Luke Fox from Sportsnet tweeted out that the Maple Leafs, and I'm just going to pull it up here if my phone will load, that the Maple Leafs interviewed Matt Savoie twice during the season, but not at the combine. The prospect spoke to 16 teams ahead of the draft. Now, this is interesting considering the fact that Matthew Savoie is a projected top 10, possibly top 5 pick in the draft. And considering where the Maple Leafs are, they're picking 25th. That's way beyond their range. Is the possibility of trading up into the draft to get not necessarily a top 10 pick, but a top 15 pick likely? And if so, I doubt Matthew Savoie is on their radar, but they did talk to him because they may have liked what he has. If there's a bigger deal involved, can the Maple Leafs make it happen to get into that top 10 and select Savoie?
I think they could make a trade into the top 15 if they wanted to. To be completely honest, I don't think they will, because I think when you look back to 2020, when they traded into the first round to get Rodi and Amarov, it was a little different because they didn't have a first round pick already. But because they do have a first round pick and it's at a decent area, like 25th overall, I just can't see the Leafs moving up in this draft. I don't think unless there's a prospect they really, really like, and unless that prospect happens to be Savoie, I guess, if they talk to him, then I don't see Kyle Dubas trading up in the first round. I think that, there's a lot of good players that you can get between 20th overall and, 40th overall, 50th overall without having to give up any assets. So I think that Kyle Dubas, knowing what he's done at previous drafts and stuff, I think it's probably more likely that, they just keep their pick at 25th overall instead of trading up to take someone like Savoie. Having said that, if they were to trade into the top 15, I'd be rooting for your boy, Kevin Korchinski. I think Matt Savoie is great, but I think Korchinski would solve a better need. So.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. I mean, I guess teams do their due diligence where they talk to players high in the first round, mid, second, third. They talk to everybody to try and get a grip on or try to get a sense of who they are as a player, what they can bring. And that was what I got at the NHL draft combine. The same situation happened with Ty Nelson, where he talked to the Maple Leafs all season, but not at certain points during the season, twice, but not at the draft combine. In a perfect world, I would like them to get into the top 10. I mean, who wouldn't like a top 10 pick? But given where they are and given how deep that they are in their prospect pool already and how they're developing, I think it's just going to be an abundance of riches for them. But either way, if they're able to scout properly in the 25 range, I think they're going to get a great prospect no matter what. Again, it's probably a very unlikely scenario that it happens, but it was interesting that they were able to talk to a potential top 10 pick, given where they at, and maybe who knows if there was a blockbuster to happen on draft day and the Maple Leafs end up in the top 10, that would be something. I doubt it, but it's not out of the question considering what we just saw yesterday from Luke Fox. Now, speaking of which, I know you already mentioned Kevin Korchinski, but if you were able to get into the top 15, if you were part of the Maple Leaf scouting team right now, I know, you already mentioned Korchinski, but is there anyone else on your mind that you would love in that top 15 range?
Yeah, I know. There we go. I mean, I've definitely talked about it on this podcast before. I would be super into the idea of Rutger McGroarty in a Leafs jersey. Mm-hmm. Granted, I think that if they really wanted to pick McGroarty, I think they would probably, maybe trade into the top 20 or even just up from 25th overall. Otherwise, sticking with the trend of great names, I think Cutter Gauthier would be a great fit. I think he could really fit into the top 6 well. Him and Nyes on the left side, I think would be electric for a future left side of the offensive core. And then I watched a lot more of Liam Ogren yesterday when I was doing my top 10 list, top 10 left wing list for the Hockey Writers. I watched a bunch of his highlights, and I'm a big fan of his game as well. So he'd be a good pick in the top 15 too.
It's interesting you brought up Cutter Gauthier because he is capable of playing center as well. And a lot of teams found that very valuable. So he could go higher up depending if a team sees a better fit for him at center than on the wing. So he can be that dual type of player. And I've been on the Liam Ogren train for quite some time right now. And I think he possesses a lot of NHL ready qualities. I mean, he's a fantastic leader, great character, great intensity on the ice. I mean, you saw that at the UA teams, and he's just absolutely dynamic when he has the puck. He has a great compete level, and his smarts are there too. And I think with the Maple Leafs, the one thing that I got from them talking to prospects at this draft is they're looking for IQ. And, it was already reported that, they were showing clips and telling them, what would you do in this situation? So if there's a player that gave a great response, chances are they're going to be high on their radar because smarts and IQ is very important. Obviously, McGroarty is another great name, Noah Ostlund, but I think one to look out for is Marco Kasper as well. I think this is a player that can rise up into the top 10 because of that compete, that energy, his smarts already. And, he may not have the production at the SHL level, but he is a younger player playing up against senior competition, and he's just absolutely relentless. This guy wants the puck on his stick no matter what, and he's always going into the high danger area. So those are some higher names that I would like. But then again, Rutger McGroarty can drop. Noah Ostlund can drop. A lot of players could possibly drop. Who knows? But those would be ideal names if the Maple Leafs were to select in the top 15. That is it for this week's show. Once again, this episode is brought to you by morningskate.io, the daily newsletter delivered to your inbox Monday to Friday, jammed packed with the best hockey stuff on the planet. It is your daily dose of NHL news, rumors, histories, funnies, quizzes, you name it, you'll get that and more from the Hockey Writers staff every day. All you got to do is put your email in the link in the description below, and you are set to go. Once again, this is it for this episode of the Maple Leafs Lounge. For Alex Hobson, I'm Peter Baracchini, and we will see you next time.